For so many years, the NCAA used to just frustrate me and confound me like no other. On the one hand, I'd look at what they had done with college basketball and the phenomenon that they've created in March Madness and how they set about creating a process over the years of determining a true national champion. And there's like no real complaints whatsoever. It's beautifully done. It's almost majestic in its simplicity, yet pure and unadulterated genius. And yes, where you'll have people always complain that this 19 and 11 team got in, but this one didn't. At the end of the day, nobody cares. Everybody accepts and understands that if you win March Madness, you are the one true national champion in college basketball. So I would look at the NCAA and see how perfectly they got so many things when it came to the tournament of what used to be 64 anyways, and be like, man, they do so many things well there. And then I would be so incredibly frustrated and get so pissed off when I look at the atrocity of what they would do on the college football side. For years, the national champion was just determined by the votes of writers and coaches, and how stupid that is. Let's not determine a national champion on the field. Let's determine it in a poll. It would be like having a presidential election where you only went off of the results of the polls. Like, you didn't even bother having people actually go to the ballot boxes on election day and placing their votes and determining the winner that way. You would say, oh, Donald Trump is polling ahead, or Hillary Clinton is polling ahead. That's enough to give them the freaking election. While our media may say that, at the end of the day, it's still about who wins the vote. You still actually have to vote. There is still a process to actually determine a winner. It's not subjective. It is factual. But yeah, college football for years, they do it off of freaking polls. More often than not even determining a national champion on the field. And you people were supposed to be excited about that and happy about that. It was fucking stupid. So they finally decided to try and address that in the late 90s. After they made sure they gave Tom Osborne one more national champion to send his overrated ass packing, they're like, what do we do now? Oh, we got it. Let's come up with the BCS, also known as the bull crap system. How freaking stupid this thing was. It was like, you know the solution to the problem, and yet instead of actually addressing the problem and creating the solution that everybody knows is the only solution, you come up with this half-ass convoluted bullshit. We're still primarily focused on what writers said and what other pollsters and then computers said to determine just the top two teams, and then they'll play in the national championship game. So, of course, what would come with this is it's an incredibly subjective matter, and who are the best teams, and da-da-da. So sometimes the best two teams ended up not playing each other in the national championship game. Imagine that. So after so many years of the bull crap system, and people bitching and moaning and fans complaining about it and fussing about it, and I think even getting to the point where the networks were complaining and fussing about it because they saw the possibilities for a playoff, realized that they're missing out on a shit ton of money, that it had to change, and it had to change now. So we finally got a college football playoff. Praise God. It's one of those things where somebody says, anything's better than the way it used to be done. Well, the BCS was better than just having writers and coaches vote for it in a poll. I'll give you that. But it wasn't much better. A playoff of some kind is at least a lot better than the old BCS bullcrap system. But the playoff that we get still doesn't solve the whole problem, still doesn't create a final solution to the national championship problem. And I talked about it last year, how I thought this college football playoff is stupid. And I still think it stands true. The college football playoff is still stupid because it is a half-ass solution to a full-on problem. Now, look, last year, everybody's fine with what happened. You know, you got Alabama and Ohio State in one semifinal game. Then in the other, you got the last two Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks in Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota. Everybody's pleased with those four bigger-name schools, with those big marquee talents making it and everything else, and that's fine. And at the end of the day, Ohio State won the national championship, and they're the one true national champions, whatever the case might be. What I don't understand is for a system that is actually supposed to determine one true national champion, which is code for now, after so many years of fighting against it, the NCAA realizes just how stupid they were and how much money they were fucking losing out on. So now they've decided to adapt. Why would they come up with this close-ended type of system that leaves several teams out that either deserve to be in there or need to be in there from a financial and monetary standpoint? Like, look, as of the past week, the top 4 teams were Clemson, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Iowa. Clemson, no real beefs. They're undefeated in a power conference. Deserve to be there. Whether they're number 1 or not, they deserve to be somewhere in the top 4. Alabama, they're playing in the SEC championship game. They're 11-1. Their one loss was to Ole Miss. You know Alabama's going to get certain preferential treatment, but at the end of the day, they're a one-loss SEC team playing in the SEC title game. They belong somewhere in the top 4. Speaking of getting gifts from the college football playoff and the old BCS system, nobody ever benefited more than freaking Oklahoma. I mean, this is a team that could not win its conference championship game and still find a way in the old BCS system, mind you, to end up in the national championship game. Remember 2004? Oh, my Christ. Oklahoma has benefited for years from the NCAA powers that be. This year, you could sit there and say they beat Baylor, they trounced Oklahoma State, they beat TCU. They're a one-loss Big 12 team. Maybe you don't want them to repeat the mistake of last year, leaving the Big 12 team out. So you put Oklahoma in, fine, whatever. But Iowa is number 4. This is so stupid. It's about time that Kirk Ferentz actually took advantage of the quirk in his schedule where every other freaking year they don't play Ohio State, they don't play Michigan State, and they don't play Michigan. It's about time. Took them fucking long enough. I mean, but this is a team who's barely beaten Wisconsin, who's an okay team but nothing special, barely beat Illinois, who has a losing record, barely beat Minnesota, same thing, and then barely beat Nebraska when they had so much on the line, who in their non-conference schedule actually took a bit of a hit, in my opinion, because they didn't keep Northern Iowa on the schedule. They had cream puffs like Illinois State, well, I should say cream puffs, but a lower-level school in Illinois State. North Texas, who was a cream puff, and Iowa State, who was a freaking cream puff. That's 3 of their 4 non-conference wins. You could argue their only quality non-conference game was against Pittsburgh, a good, but again, not great team. So their best wins are against Pittsburgh, Northwestern, and Wisconsin. That's Iowa's resume. Not playing Michigan State, Ohio State, or Michigan, 3 quality teams in a good conference this year in the Big Ten. Their quality wins are against Pittsburgh, Northwestern, and Wisconsin. Yet this team finds themselves at number 4 in the freaking college football ranking. Give me a goddamn break. All the while, Michigan State, yes, happens to be a one-loss team and benefited from a fluke victory over Michigan, but they also got screwed in the way that they lost to Nebraska. And keep in mind, this is a Michigan State team that beat Oregon in their non-conference schedule, then won at Michigan, and then won at Ohio State with their backup quarterback. And yet Michigan State finds themselves at number 5. And I guess at the end of the day, the winner of Iowa-Michigan State is going to play in the playoff. Now Michigan State beats the brakes off of Iowa by like 30 damn points, so that way we can get it at least right. And at the end of the day, if we end up with Clemson, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Michigan State, because of the teams involved, and the conferences they represent and how they got there, a lot of people are going to fool themselves in this false sense of security that the system is working or this makes sense. But I think that's just total hogwash, and here's why. You have 5 power conferences. So you have set up a system that is so idiotic that every year you are guaranteed going to leave one of those power conferences out. And in a year, let's say, and just to give you an example, if a Florida was a one-loss team heading into this conference championship game against Alabama on Saturday, and they somehow beat Alabama, goddamn good and well, that committee would still do everything in their power to put Alabama in there as a 4 spot. So let's say you get a year where you decide 2 of the 4 best teams in the country come from one conference. Then you're leaving 2 of your Power 5 conferences completely out of the playoff freaking equation. How does that make any freaking sense whatsoever? So based off of the current formula, you're going to leave out a Power 5 school, and this year it's the Pac-12. And you could sit there and say, well, does a Pac-12 team really deserve to be in the top 4? That's not the point. How are you determining a true national champion if the conference champion from a Power 5 conference isn't even brought to the dance? Then you look at a team like Notre Dame being left out by this. Yes, they've got 2 losses, but they got 2 losses by a combined 4 freaking points to a Stanford team who has a chance to win the Pac-12 and a Clemson team that is number 1 in the freaking country. 2 flukish losses in a way, but for Notre Dame, a team that's been ravaged by injuries, especially at the most important position of all, the quarterback position. And you can sit there and say, well, who have they played? Well, they haven't played that much worse of a schedule compared to a freaking Clemson. They've played a lot of the bottom tier teams in the ACC, but they've had some other good games too. And unlike Oklahoma, who got beat by fucking Texas, Notre Dame housed their ass 38-3 to open the season. Notre Dame's played just as many qualified teams damn near as a Clemson or an Oklahoma, and most certainly a freaking Iowa. Yet there's Notre Dame being penalized because they've had 2 close losses to 2 quality teams like Stanford and in particular Clemson, the number 1 team in the country. But we've now set up a system where if a Notre Dame was undefeated, mind you, 2 schools or 2 power conferences would be left out. 2 of them. How stupid is this? And if you get to a situation where you thought Notre Dame was close but not one of the top 4, you've now left out a big-time school, an important program with a huge national following out of your college football playoff when this is all about money. How could a greedy organization like the NCAA fuck it up when it comes to money and the ability to make even more money? And trust me, putting a Notre Dame in your damn college football playoff is a license to print more money, as it would be if you put in Ohio State in. Look, you can say what you want about Ohio State. Defending national champions. Didn't always look the best this year. Bad loss at home to Michigan State, who was playing their backup quarterback. Well, that's true, but still a 1-loss Big Ten team that dominated Michigan, and has beat everybody else that's been put in front of them or they've put in front of themselves. You're really going to tell me Iowa's resume is that much better than in Ohio State's? All the while, again, when you're talking about this system and what it is, and let's call it what it is, it's a money grab, and that's fine. But they can't even get the money grab right. You're going to leave out another national power like Ohio State. I mean, and it's just ridiculous. And if you've got a situation, again, where if you're going to go off of the formula of there's only going to be 4 teams, and like I mentioned earlier, if you have a situation where the SEC has 2 teams that have a legitimate gripe or a legitimate beef to say that they belong in the top 4, you're basically saying based off of this system that on the one hand, you have to win your conference, you have to win your conference championship, unless probably you're Alabama or an Oklahoma, and they'll figure out a way to fucking get you in, that you're never going to have a second team from a power conference. And it's just ridiculous. I just don't see how the NCAA can't see this. I just don't see how, more importantly, the networks behind the college football playoff can't fucking grasp this concept and can't get this concept that 4 teams isn't enough. Look, I'm not saying we need to have a March Madness style tournament in the sense of having 16 or 24 or 32 or 64 teams. None of that ridiculous shit. But this college football playoff is still a half-ass solution. They're leaving so much money on the goddamn table, and they're still not doing the best job they possibly can of determining a true national champion. Because a lot of this is still subjective bullshit. It really is. I mean, because at the end of the day, let's say Iowa loses to Michigan State. So Michigan State has 1 loss. All right, they're probably in. But if they were a 1-loss team, are they really that much worse or better than an Oklahoma? Or if a Florida was a long-loss team, a Stanford, if they only had 1 loss, it's just so much subjective bullshit still involved in the process. And we're leaving teams out. If this is a money grab, then let's grab all the fucking money we can. If you had the playoff be in 6 teams, which I think would be ideal, you could still find a way to cram Ohio State in there, assuming Michigan State would beat Iowa. You could get Iowa the fuck out of there where they don't belong. You could put Ohio State in there, and then you could include your Pac-12 champion in Stanford. That way, with the 16 playoff, you're rewarding the top 2 teams, probably Clemson and Alabama, with first-round byes, because you're saying, hey, you know what? You've earned that right as being one of the top 2 teams. You put a little bit of importance on being one of those top 2 teams. All the while, you're getting 2 more bowl games involved as being part of the college football playoff process, which ultimately elevates the profile of them, which means they make more money, which means the whole sport as a whole makes more goddamn money. And all the while, you're not leaving an entire section of the country out like you're doing in this current formula with the West Coast by not including the Pac-12 champion. Now you've gotten a way to include the conference champion of a Power 5 conference. All 5 of them would be represented, and then you could throw that 6th at-large team in there. Whether you want that to be Notre Dame or Ohio State, it doesn't fucking matter. It's just a much better solution than what they have, or even better, if you want to go full-on money grab, would there really be anything wrong with them going to 8 teams? Don't give me that academics bullshit, because you could take that and blow it out your fucking ass, because at the end of the day, when this college football playoff is going on, a lot of these schools are still on their winter break or whatever any goddamn ways, and even if they were, what the hell difference does that make? Think about if you did 8 teams this year. You could have Clemson, Alabama, Oklahoma, Michigan State. You could find a way to jam Ohio State in there with 1 loss, Stanford in there if they win the Pac-12 championship, Notre Dame in there with 2 losses, and even if you want to go 2-loss teams and you want to get another team with a big national following and you want to maximize your money grab and include a second team from another big 5 power conference, and throw a Florida State fucking in there or a Florida in there, whatever the hell the case might be. Not only do you do a better job of determining a true national champion by getting more teams involved and eliminating a lot of the subjectivity out of it, because the veracity of the argument about who's 4th place is much stronger than who's 8th place or who should be 9th place. Therefore, you eliminate some of that. You put more of the focus on the playoff itself, the actual determination of a true national champion. And think about how much more money you fucking make by having more games and more teams. And in particular, which is all that matters to this committee and the sport and the networks as a whole, is getting more of the big power conference teams in the mix. The big power conference teams with the big national followings that bring a lot of money to the table with them. You're limiting yourself. Why have 4 teams when 6 or 8, gets the fucking job done even better? It does a better job of determining a true national champion, and all the while allows you to make even more fucking money, get even more television ratings. All of these things that just point to me of just fucking do it. So, of course, it'll be years before the NCAA probably expands the playoff format in any way, shape, or form. And you'll have a lot of people in the media and a lot of fans sitting there and dumb dick defending this shit because they can't cover their senses and realize how flawed this system still is. They'll be like, well, it's so much better than this. Let's just be happy with it. No! Let's be happy with it when they actually fucking get it right. They get college basketball right. Why can't they do the same thing with college football? Just because something was better than what it was before, that doesn't mean it's great. The BCS was better than the old way of doing it, and the BCS sucked dick. The college football playoff is a lot better than the BCS, yes. But this college football playoff still somewhat semi-sucks dick. Let's get to the point where we actually have a playoff that doesn't suck dick in college football.